Have you ever noticed your baby doing something completely strange, maybe even a little scary? Their arms suddenly jerk in their sleep, their breathing stops for a few seconds, or their skin suddenly changes color, and just like that, you're in full panic mode. Here's the thing. Babies do a lot of weird things, and most of it is totally normal. Their tiny bodies are still developing, and their nervous system, circulation, and reflexes are not like ours. But when you don't expect it, these little surprises can make your heart skip a beat. So how do you know what's harmless and what's a real cause for concern? That's exactly what we're covering today. I'm going to walk you through 6 baby reactions that look terrifying but are actually nothing to worry about. And make sure you stick around because at the end I'll share 3 reactions that aren't normal and need medical attention. Let's get into it. Imagine this, your baby is sleeping soundly in their crib. You're watching them, thinking how peaceful and perfect they look. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, their tiny arms shoot out, their legs stiffen, and their whole body flinches like they just got scared out of their mind. Your first thought? Are they in pain? Did they have a nightmare? Is something seriously wrong? This is called the Moro reflex, also known as the startle reflex, and it's completely normal. It happens when babies feel like they're falling or experience a sudden change in movement or sound. It's their nervous system reacting to protect them. Except since they're still so tiny, their movements are exaggerated. Newborns are especially sensitive to this. Something as simple as laying them down too quickly, a loud noise, or even shifting their position can trigger the reflex. Their arms fling out, their fingers splay open, and sometimes they even let out a little cry before relaxing again. The good news? This reflex isn't a sign of distress, it's just their body doing what it's supposed to do. By about 3 to 6 months old, the Moro reflex fades as their nervous system develops. But if your baby's constant startling is waking them up repeatedly, you can try swaddling. Wrapping them snugly in a swaddle can help minimize those jerky movements, making sleep more restful for both of you. That's one scary-looking baby reaction that's totally harmless, but what about when their skin suddenly changes color? Let's talk about that next. Picture this, you go to pick up your baby and suddenly you notice something strange. One side of their body is bright red, while the other half is pale. It's like someone split their body in half and painted them 2 different colors. Naturally, your heart drops. Is this an allergic reaction? A circulation problem? Do I need to call the doctor? Take a deep breath, because this is called harlequin color change and it's completely normal. It happens because a baby's blood circulation is still developing. When they're lying on their side, gravity pulls the blood downward, causing the lower side to turn red while the upper side stays pale. This effect is most common in newborns up to 3 weeks old, but it can look pretty dramatic, but it's completely harmless. The color change usually lasts for a few seconds to a few minutes, and as soon as you reposition them, their skin evens out again. No pain, no distress, just a quirky thing their body does. But here's an important distinction. Harlequin color change is temporary and harmless, but if your baby's skin ever turns blue or grayish, that's a different story. That can be a sign of poor oxygen circulation, and that's something you don't want to ignore. We'll talk about that in the section on reactions that aren't normal. Now, speaking of strange color changes, let's talk about something that confuses a lot of parents: blue hands and feet. It's a chilly morning and you pick up your baby to get them dressed. That's when you notice it. Their hands and feet look bluish purple. Your mind immediately jumps to the worst case scenario. Is something wrong with circulation? Are they not getting enough oxygen? Here's the reality. If your newborn's hands and feet are blue or purple but the rest of their body looks normal, it's nothing to worry about. This is called acrocyanosis, and it happens because babies have immature blood circulation. Their tiny hearts focus on pumping oxygen-rich blood to their most important organs first: the brain, heart, and lungs. That means their extremities, like hands and feet, might not get as much blood flow in the early weeks, especially when they're cold. This is completely normal in newborns and usually fades as they grow. You might notice it more when they're fussy, cold, or just after birth, but as long as their chest, lips, and face remain a healthy pink color, their oxygen levels are fine. However, there's one exception. If their lips, tongue, or face ever turn blue, or if they seem limp and unresponsive, that's not normal. That could be a sign of oxygen deprivation and you need to get medical help immediately. But assuming your baby's circulation is just fine, let's move on to something that can really freak parents out: when their baby suddenly stops breathing for a few seconds. Imagine this. You're watching your newborn sleep when suddenly they stop breathing. Their tiny chest isn't moving and your heart jumps into your throat. You lean in, ready to shake them awake, and just as you do, they take a deep breath and go right back to normal. That moment of sheer panic, completely understandable, but what you just witnessed is called periodic breathing, and in newborns, it's normal. Babies' breathing patterns are different from adults. Their brain is still learning how to regulate their respiratory system, so sometimes they'll take rapid shallow breaths followed by a short pause before they breathe normally again. This cycle can repeat, especially during sleep. Periodic breathing usually looks like fast breathing for a few seconds, a pause in breathing for up to 10 seconds, a deep breath to reset. It's common in the first few months and tends to happen more when they're in a deep sleep. However, there's a limit to what's normal. If your baby's breathing pauses for more than 20 seconds, or if they turn blue, seem limp, or struggle to catch their breath, that's a red flag. You should call emergency services immediately. So if your baby does this quick breath, pause, deep breath cycle, it's scary to witness, but totally normal. If they actually stop breathing for too long, that's when it's time to worry. And on that note, let's talk about something that can look like a seizure, but usually isn't. Those weird little tremors and shakes. You're holding your baby and suddenly their little arms or legs start twitching. Maybe it's a quick shudder, or maybe it's more rhythmic, almost like a mini seizure. You freeze, wondering, is something wrong? Here's what you need to know. Babies have immature nervous systems, which means their bodies sometimes move in unexpected ways. Tremors, shakes, and little twitches are usually just their nervous system adjusting to life outside the womb. These movements are especially common when they're falling asleep or waking up, when they're hungry or overstimulated, during active sleep when their brain is processing everything they've experienced that day. Most of the time, if you gently place your hand on their limb, the shaking stops. That's a good sign that it's just normal newborn muscle activity. But here's when you should pay attention. If the shaking is rhythmic and continues even when you hold their limb, or if it's accompanied by eye rolling or stiffness, it could be a seizure, which is something you'll want to talk to a doctor about. So occasional tremors, completely normal. Shaking that doesn't stop when touched, that's a red flag. But now let's talk about something that's completely normal but looks really unsettling. Eye rolling. It happens when your baby is falling asleep. Their eyelids flutter, their eyes roll back, and for a second it looks like they're having a medical episode. This is totally normal. Babies spend a lot of time in active sleep, which means their body twitches, their breathing changes, and yes, their eyes can move in strange ways. Sometimes their eyes will open just a little bit while they're still asleep, and they might even make funny facial expressions. This is just their brain adjusting to sleep cycles. As long as they're breathing normally and they settle into a peaceful sleep afterward, there's no reason to worry. But if your baby's eye rolling happens while they're awake, or if it's paired with body stiffening and unresponsiveness, that's something to bring up with your pediatrician. All right, we've covered 6 strange but totally normal baby reactions. But now let's talk about the 3 that aren't normal, the ones that mean you should get medical help immediately. We've covered some of the strangest baby reactions that might look terrifying but are actually harmless. But now let's talk about the ones that aren't normal, the ones that need medical attention right away. If you ever notice any of these signs, don't wait. Call your doctor or seek emergency help immediately. Persistent blue or gray skin. It's completely normal for a newborn's hands and feet to look a little bluish. That's just their circulatory system adjusting, and it usually goes away as they get older. But if you ever notice your baby's lips, face, or chest turning blue or gray, that's a sign that something is wrong. When a baby's skin changes color like that, it usually means their body isn't getting enough oxygen. This can happen for a few reasons. Some babies are born with heart conditions that affect how oxygen is delivered through their blood. Others might be struggling with a lung issue like pneumonia or RSV, which can make it harder to breathe. And sometimes it's something as immediate as choking, maybe on milk, mucus, or even silent reflux. If you ever see this happening, first check your baby's breathing. Are they gasping for air? Are they making grunting or wheezing noises? If their chest looks like it's pulling in deeply with each breath, or they seem like they're struggling, that's a red flag. And if their lips, tongue, or face are changing color, don't wait. Call emergency services immediately. Some parents think they can wait it out, but oxygen deprivation is serious and needs immediate attention. It's always better to be safe than sorry. seizure-like movements that don't stop. We talked earlier about how newborns sometimes shake or tremble. That's normal, most of the time. But sometimes those little movements aren't just muscle twitches. Sometimes they're seizures. So how do you tell the difference? If your baby's movements are random and stop when you gently hold their arm or leg, that's a good sign it's just normal newborn jitters. But if the shaking continues even when you try to stop it, that's not normal. Seizures in babies often come with other symptoms like body stiffening, unusual eye movements, or a total lack of response to you. If your baby's shaking looks rhythmic and repetitive, like the same movement happening over and over, it's worth taking seriously. You might also notice their eyes rolling back, their mouth making odd movements, or a moment where they seem frozen in place before the shaking starts again. If you ever see something like this, don't panic, but act quickly. Try to record a short video if you can. This will help your doctor understand what's happening. Then call your pediatrician or go to the emergency room. There are many possible reasons for seizures in newborns. Some are caused by low blood sugar, others by infections or neurological conditions. The only way to know for sure is to have a doctor take a closer look. Long pauses in breathing, over 20 seconds. Newborns breathe differently than adults. Sometimes their breathing speeds up, sometimes it slows down. They even take short pauses before catching their breath again. That's all normal. But if your baby stops breathing for more than 20 seconds, that's not normal and it's a medical emergency. This is called apnea, and it can happen for different reasons. Some babies, especially those born prematurely, have an underdeveloped brainstem that doesn't always send the right signals to keep breathing consistently. Other times, reflux can cause a baby to stop breathing for a moment, and in some cases, a respiratory infection like RSV can make it harder for them to breathe normally. So how do you know when it's time to worry? If you're watching your baby and suddenly realize their chest isn't moving, or if they go quiet when they were just breathing normally, act fast. Try to stimulate them by gently touching or rubbing their back. If they start breathing again right away and seem fine, still call your doctor just to be safe. But if they remain limp, unresponsive, or turn pale or blue, don't wait. Call emergency services immediately. Apnea can sometimes happen once and never again, but if your baby has repeated episodes, your doctor might want to monitor their breathing overnight. Either way, this is one of those times where you should always trust your instincts. If something feels off, get help. Babies do some pretty weird things, and as a parent, it's easy to panic when you see something you weren't expecting. But most of the time, these strange little behaviors like jerky movements, color changes, and twitching are completely harmless. The key is knowing what's normal and what's not. If your baby's reactions are short-lived, go away on their own, and don't seem to bother them, chances are everything is just fine. But if you ever see blue skin on the face, shaking that doesn't stop, or long pauses in breathing, trust your instincts and seek medical help. Which of these surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, and if you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe for more parenting tips every week. You've got this. See you next time.